Hey everybody, Adam Davidson, RadCast for Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. Let's talk about the animals. This is Genesis chapter 9, right after the flood. This is God talking to Noah and his sons. Here's what he says to them. He says, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth, on all the birds in the sky, on every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, now I give you everything." And that's Genesis 9, the word of the Lord. Back in the days of Adam and Eve, everything was harmonious. There was no hierarchy. I mean, there was. Adam and Eve were created in God's image, but God created all of them, animals and plants and humans, and said, go and enjoy creation. Now God creates a hierarchy. And for the first time in Scripture, the word fear shows up. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth. Interestingly, scientists are still trying to pinpoint why it is that animals are afraid of humans. They notice that as humans continue to sort of work into like more and more wooded areas of earth and change the migration patterns and the behaviors of animals as we sort of take over their homes in the woods and build our own homes, that animals are like weirdly changing their behavior and avoiding humans even more. And they're like, why are the animals afraid of humans? It's because of Genesis 9. This is the hierarchy that God has created. Now, yesterday I asked you to share your phobias, and Ed was right to point out that there is a difference between a phobia and a fear. A phobia is incapacitating. A fear is just a thing that we're afraid of. A phobia is truly something that shuts you down. So, for example, I'm afraid of snakes, but it's not really a phobia, because I can still take care of business if there's a snake offering a threat. Like if there's a viper biting at my children, I'm not going to go hide in the closet. I'm going to take care of it. In fact, snakes were the number one phobia, I think, in terms of animals that you shared yesterday. And thanks everybody for sharing. Appreciate that. Snakes and spiders, mice, rodents, those were kind of near the top. Sharks were kind of swimming around in the background, a second or third place. A cat fear showed up at one point. And then we started talking about like water and bridges, falling or heights. And one person, in fact, two people talked about how there's a pattern of fear they have because of something that happened to them in the past. We're going to get into that later on this week when we talk about fear for the rest of this week on RadCast, which is why you got to keep watching. But for right now, let's just talk about the animals. All those animals that you're afraid of, you have authority over them. It's a very strange concept indeed. And so I'm going to show you something that I found that I think will help us understand this to some degree. But before I show you this, I have to tell you there is a parental advisory. We have some explicit content coming up, not really, but this will maybe bother a few of you. Hopefully not as much as it bothers me, but let's give it a watch, shan't we? A nice day outside, a beautiful hawk, part of God's creation, now under our authority as one of the animals, just flying around, having a grand old time. And hawks, like every animal, they get hungry. And so they pick up a delicious stick to eat. But then you remember, hawks don't eat sticks, they eat animals. And why is that stick wiggling? Why is that? Ah! And then the wiggle stick falls to the ground. There it is. See you later, Danger Noodle. Frightening, isn't it? Now, scary enough was the shot of the hot dogs, which maybe you caught at the beginning, but that's a frightening movie, isn't it? Like, that's one of my fears. Something drops a snake from the sky. I don't want that to happen. What does Genesis tell us? It tells us that we have not any reason to be afraid. Why are we afraid? Well, we don't want the danger noodle to bite us. That's a good point. However, the point that we're making today is simply this, that God did create fear as a hierarchy in the natural order. However, what he didn't do is create fear in you. His intention is not for you to be afraid. In fact, there is no fear in God. There is no fear in love. So the tension is still there. What do we do? What do we do with this fear that we have? That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. But until then, I leave you with these words. This is Fredrick Buechner. He simply says this: here is the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid. And I say to you again, church, friends, don't be afraid. We'll get back to it tomorrow. Until then, today, share what you're going to share. I'd like to hear it. That's RadCast.